Well as when to hold the special election to replace him. We could hear from the governor at any time on this issue. But with me now is New Jersey Democratic Congressman Bill Pascrell, who served in Congress with Senator Lautenberg for more than a decade. Good morning to you, sir.
Chuck, how are you this morning?
I'm all right. Just talk to me a minute about Senator Lautenberg. His legislative legacy will be what, as far as you're concerned?
Well, he was certainly not a spectator, Chuck. He was deeply involved, more than his legislation, be it in transportation, be it in air quality, smoking, drinking, against gun violence. I think that he was a true advocate of the people. When you know his background, he came from very humble backgrounds in Paterson, New Jersey, city I've lived in all my life. Mother and father working very, very hard in the factories of Passaic and Paterson, and then you see his dad passes away early in his 40s, so he's not born with a silver spoon. Worked together with a bunch of guys and put together one of the great corporations of this world, and that is ADP. So he came from humble background, but he knew basically what he had to do, and he never forgot his roots, Chuck, like many politicians do.
I know that the last thing some people in New Jersey and probably yourself want to talk about is the politics that is now surrounding this, but the business of Washington always has to move on. So let me ask you, what's your advice to Governor Christie? If he called you up and asked you what you thought he should do, what would you recommend?
I would tell him to pray, because he's going to need some wisdom in this decision. He has the authority and the ability to name someone in a transitional phase, but should that person then be eligible to run when and if we have this election, when and if it happens this year or whether it happens next year. So he's going to have a tough job on his hands, because he's got to think about if he's going to run, if he wins for governor and runs for president, he's got to worry about the right. So perhaps he doesn't want to put anybody in there who's going to be not only an individual who keeps the position for a year and a half, or keeps the position for just a few months if the election is going to be this November, but he wants the right wing. He wants to get back in their good graces again. On the other hand, I think that New Jersey is a state that has looked to moderation, and we'll see if the governor follows that path.
Is there a Republican that you would favor him picking?
Well, I'm not in the business of choosing candidates on the other side. The fact of the matter is there are many qualified people. Some of them have already been mentioned. Some have already run for the position. Joe Carrillis in the last election. Tom Kane, two fine people. There are other fine people. They don't have a particularly bench, I don't think, Chuck. And it should be an interesting election. I would hope that that election would be held this November, but that's up to the governor and the legislature to decide.
And perhaps the state Supreme Court. Do you have a preference on the Democratic side? Cory Booker, Frank Pallone, yourself? Are you going to think about jumping into this race?
I'm not thinking about it right now, Chuck. You know, reaching out to Bonnie and the family, Lautenberg family. It's a great family. I've been very, very close friends with the family. And that's what's on my mind right now. When the time comes, I'll be able to shift gears.
Let me ask you about the IRS hearing. I know that you're going to be a part of that today. Are you satisfied with how the Obama administration, the Obama White House has handled this so far?
I thought it could be a little bit more aggressive. There's a lot of interesting issues that are involved here, Chuck. Certainly what we believe in America and what we believe in the Ways and Means Committee, which has oversight over the IRS, is that everybody should be treated the same. That obviously sounds at this particular point, from what we know, that it wasn't, that there were certain groups that were targeted. On the other hand, why were they targeted? Well, you have a big difference between a 501c4 and why didn't they apply these organizations for a 527, what we call 527 status, which would allow them to be totally exempt, which would allow them, but they would have to disclose who their donors were. Why are we so reluctant to get into that issue of allowing and forcing groups to absolutely become transparent and tell us who's giving money to them? Be they on the left, the right, the center, North Pole, South Pole, is immaterial to me.
Well, that is the missing part of this debate, which is the issue of whether this part of the tax code should even be relevant to political organizations. Anyway,
well, it's not a God-given right, Chuck.
Right.
It's what the Congress chooses. So we have created a monster. No question about it.
That's right. More complicating in the tax code. Bill Pascrell, Democrat from New Jersey. Thanks for coming on this morning, sir.
Chuck, thank you.
All right. Well, if it's Tuesday.